They say it's a game of numbers, a dance of charm and pursuit. But what if the most discerning players are quietly folding their hands, not out of defeat, but out of profound clarity? What if the men who see the world with an almost unnerving precision have simply looked at the prevailing romantic landscape and uttered a calm, resolute, "No, thank you"? This isn't about fear or inadequacy. It's about an evolved understanding of value, a conscious withdrawal from a system that often rewards illusion over substance. Welcome to Sigma Male Community, the sanctuary for men who walk their own path, governed by internal strength and an unwavering commitment to truth. We delve deep into the mind of the Sigma, the man who operates outside the conventional hierarchy, not in defiance but in serene self-possession. Today we're not just scratching the surface. We're dissecting the core reasons why the modern Sigma male has largely ceased the traditional pursuit of women, not as a sign of resignation, but as an act of profound self-respect and a testament to a stoically cultivated inner world. Prepare to have your perceptions challenged, because the Sigma's silence in the dating arena isn't empty. It's pregnant with an unspoken wisdom that values inner peace and genuine connection above all else. The decision for a Sigma male to step back from the chase isn't born from a single grievance, but from a confluence of observations, a pattern recognized by a mind attuned to authenticity and allergic to artifice. It's a quiet revolution of self-preservation, rooted in principles that often echo the timeless wisdom of Stoic thought, focusing on what can be controlled, valuing inner virtue over external chaos, and seeking clarity amidst a world often content with noise. Let's explore the intricate layers of this deliberate disengagement. 1. The uncompromising pursuit of raw truth. Sigma men don't just prefer authenticity, they demand it as the non-negotiable currency in any human interaction, especially the intimate ones. In a world increasingly saturated with meticulously curated personas and digitally filtered realities, they've developed an almost visceral allergy to performances, to the masks people wear hoping to gain approval or advantage. Imagine walking into a prestigious art gallery, only to discover that every single painting is a clever forgery. That's precisely how Sigmas view relationships built on facades, on carefully constructed images rather than genuine character. They aren't easily fooled by rehearsed charm, by virtue signaling vulnerability that lacks true depth, or by personalities that shift like sand depending on the audience. For them, authenticity isn't merely a desirable trait or a fashionable buzzword, it's the bedrock of existence, a fundamental requirement for any meaningful connection. They would rather stand alone in the stark, sometimes uncomfortable light of unvarnished truth than participate in the elaborate dance of pretense and shadows that characterizes so much of modern social interaction. When someone's spoken words don't seamlessly synchronize with their underlying energy, when laughter feels hollow and staged, or when emotions appear engineered for effect rather than genuinely felt, Sigma men don't just politely excuse themselves or gradually drift away, they often vanish, decisively and without fanfare. To their discerning eye, a single crack in someone's authenticity isn't a minor flaw to be overlooked. It's a fissure revealing an entire underworld of potential dishonesty, a sign that the foundation itself is compromised. This isn't a display of arrogance or a claim to moral superiority, it's an evolutionary adaptation, a protective mechanism honed by experience. Sigmas have learned, often through painful observation, that every lie, no matter how seemingly insignificant, has the potential to metastasize, poisoning the well of trust. They've witnessed relationships crumble under the accumulated weight of unspoken resentments, performative affection, and the slow erosion of genuine connection. So, they instinctively cut through the noise, bypassing superficial niceties and social lubricants to ask the unspoken question. Who are you when no one is watching? They don't want your polished highlight reel, they crave the unedited director's cut, the fears, the contradictions, the unvarnished passions, and even the unfiltered rage if it is genuine. To a Sigma, a person desperately clinging to their mask, to their carefully constructed illusion, isn't just uninteresting or boring, they represent a potential danger to his own internal alignment and peace, a source of unnecessary complication in a life dedicated to clarity. This mirrors the Stoic emphasis on living in accordance with nature and reason, where truth and clear perception are paramount, and self-deception or the deception of others is a deviation from a virtuous path. 2. The silent war against emotional chess. Ambiguity, in the realm of emotional communication, is a language Sigma men steadfastly refuse to learn, let alone speak. While many individuals in the modern dating scene dissect texts for hidden meanings, agonize over the timing of delayed replies, or try to interpret the nuances of mixed signals, Sigmas perceive these games for precisely what they often are, exercises in emotional manipulation and a subtle form of blackmail for attention. They have thoroughly decoded the toxic algebra of contemporary romantic entanglements, where the deliberate withholding of clear communication, the sending of mixed signals, is often wielded as a tool for power, and where genuine vulnerability is sometimes misinterpreted or exploited as weakness. But here lies their fundamental divergence. They don't care about these unwritten, often juvenile rules of engagement. A Sigma male will not invest his energy or time chasing someone who strategically withholds attention to feel desired, or who crafts cryptic, ambiguous messages designed to test his interest or provoke a specific reaction. To him, these maneuvers aren't charming flirtations or intriguing signs of interest. They are glaring red flags, dressed up as playful butterflies, signaling emotional immaturity and a lack of directness he finds deeply unappealing. Picture this common scenario. A woman sends a vague, potentially alarming, "we need to talk" text late at midnight without further context. Many men would immediately descend into a spiral of panic, overanalyzing every syllable, replaying recent interactions, and losing sleep over the perceived impending doom. The Sigma? He is more likely to register the message and then go to sleep. Why this seemingly detached response? Because he operates from a core understanding that clarity is the ultimate power move, and more importantly, a sign of respect. Respect for his time, his intelligence, and his emotional energy. If you are unwilling or unable to state your needs, concerns, or intentions directly and transparently, he logically assumes that you either have no needs worth respecting or that you prefer a mode of interaction he finds unproductive and draining. Sigmas don't engage in the volatile game of hot and cold emotional theatrics. Their emotional state is more akin to a precisely controlled thermostat, consistently maintaining an internal equilibrium. They will readily and decisively walk away from situations that require mind reading or deciphering coded messages, not out of wounded pride or an unwillingness to understand, but because their valuable mental and emotional resources are reserved for individuals brave enough and mature enough to say what they mean and mean what they say. This resonates with the Stoic virtue of wisdom, which involves clear judgment and understanding, and avoiding the unnecessary emotional turmoil caused by irrational games. 3. The death of digital puppetry. In the contemporary digital age, Instagram likes, follower counts, and curated online personas have become, for many, the new metrics of self-worth, as addictive, potentially cancerous to genuine self-esteem, and ultimately as superficial as chasing fleeting trends. Sigma men, with their innate skepticism towards external validation, don't typically slide into DMs with generic pickup lines, nor do they feel compelled to flex rented Lamborghinis or portray an exaggerated lifestyle online for clout or attention. They have observed, with a kind of detached anthropological interest, how social media platforms can transform individuals into perpetual brand managers of their own lives, often compelling them to trade raw authenticity for fleeting digital applause and shallow engagement. A Sigma isn't going to be impressed by your 10,000 followers. Instead, he's silently wondering how many of those followers would genuinely sit with you in uncomfortable silence at 3 a.m. when life gets heavy, or offer tangible support during a crisis. He's not swayed by an endless stream of beachbody selfies or perfectly angled shots in exotic locations. Rather, he's listening intently for the subtle tremor in your voice when you speak about your childhood dreams, your genuine passions, or your hidden fears. There's a brutal, unpalatable truth that Sigmas intuitively grasp. Often, the more polished, perfect, and flawlessly curated someone's online persona appears, the more fractured, insecure, or chaotic their underlying reality might be. They've observed how these carefully constructed digital feeds can inadvertently create curated souls, people so desperately tethered to external validation, so hungry for the next like or comment, that they've gradually forgotten the contours of their own unadorned reflection, their intrinsic worth independent of online metrics. While others are frantically chasing viral moments, fleeting fame, or the approval of strangers, Sigmas are typically focused on building invisible empires of knowledge, skill, self-mastery, and genuine, albeit often fewer, deep connections. They will ultimately judge you not by the performative artistry of your TikTok dances or the popularity of your posts, but by the substance of your character. The books on your shelf that suggest a curious mind, the scars you carry, both visible and invisible, that speak of resilience, and the core convictions you would be willing to defend passionately in a room filled with shouting enemies. This is the Stoic ideal of focusing on internal character and virtue rather than external appearances and the opinions of others. 4. The art of surgical silence. The vast majority of everyday conversations, when critically examined, often amount to little more than social elevator music, pleasant, perhaps, but ultimately background noise designed to fill an uncomfortable emptiness or to simply pass the time without genuine engagement. Sigma men, however, approach communication differently. They are often composers of silence, understanding its power and its ability to reveal more than a torrent of words. They are unlikely to inquire about the weather unless it's genuinely remarkable. Instead, they are more inclined to probe, albeit subtly, about the metaphorical storm brewing inside you, the unspoken thoughts and feelings that truly define your current state. While many individuals exchange gossip, trivialities, and superficial opinions like a form of social currency, Sigmas prefer to trade in existential currency. Discussions about ideas, principles, deeper meanings, and authentic experiences. To their way of thinking, a question as mundane and perfunctory as, "How was your day?" can sometimes feel like a minor war crime against depth, an invitation to a superficial exchange they would rather avoid. They would genuinely prefer to sit in a quiet, perhaps even tense, silence with someone, allowing for the possibility of something real to emerge, than to endure an hour of mindless chatter about celebrity divorces, the latest reality TV show, or the ever-shifting trends in keto diets. But it is crucial to understand that this preference for silence or deeper conversation isn't born from aloofness, social anxiety, or disdain for others. It is a highly intentional stance. A Sigma uses silence much like a skilled surgeon uses a scalpel, with precision to cut through the superficial layers of social interaction and expose the raw, often hidden nerve of truth beneath. He knows, intuitively and through experience, that in the unhurried space between words, in the pauses where most people rush to fill the void, authentic truth often has a chance to erupt. Have you ever noticed how most people become visibly uncomfortable with silence, rushing to fill it with any available nonsense, any distracting thought? Sigmas, in contrast, often let that silence linger, observing, allowing you to either reveal something genuine about yourself, something that truly matters, or to inadvertently prove yourself unworthy of their focused time and attention by resorting to further superficialities. They aren't being rude or judgmental in these moments. They are acting as archaeologists of the soul, patiently digging past the topsoil of triviality and social conditioning to uncover the buried truths, the authentic self, that may lie dormant underneath. This mirrors the Stoic practice of mindful attention and discerning what is truly important from the trivial. 5. The ghosting of ghosts. Desperation, in its myriad forms, carries a distinct, almost palpable scent, and Sigma men, with their finely tuned senses for authenticity and emotional stability, possess what could be described as bloodhound noses for it. They can spot its subtle manifestations with unnerving accuracy. In the laugh that comes a fraction of a second too quickly and sounds a little too forced, in the barrage of clingy texts that demand constant reassurance, in the unsettling way someone might seamlessly mirror their opinions, beliefs, or even their mannerisms like a human chameleon, devoid of their own solid core. But here lies a crucial distinction in the Sigma's reaction. They don't typically judge desperation with contempt or disdain. More often they view it with a sense of pity, a quiet understanding of its origins. They understand that this pervasive neediness is often the unfortunate stench of unhealed wounds, the lingering shadow of past traumas, or the cry of individuals who desperately look to romantic relationships not as a shared voyage between two whole individuals, but as a life raft to save them from their own internal emptiness or unresolved issues. A Sigma male will not, and indeed cannot, rescue you from yourself. This isn't because he is heartless, cruel, or lacking in compassion. It's because he operates from a profound, often hard-won understanding that drowning people, in their panic and struggle, often inadvertently drag their would-be rescuers under with them. He has meticulously built his own life on a foundation of radical self-sufficiency, emotional independence, and internal resilience, and he naturally, almost as a prerequisite for deep connection, expects a potential partner to have undertaken a similar journey of self-discovery and healing. If your eyes, your words, or your overall demeanor scream, "Complete me," or "Fix me," or "I need you to be happy," he will likely vanish faster and more completely than a mirage in the desert. Why this swift and decisive retreat? Because desperation, like a contagious disease, can infect and disrupt the carefully cultivated peace and internal order that a Sigma prizes so highly. They are fiercely protective of their mental and emotional tranquility, and they will only choose to anchor themselves to those who have already demonstrated the capacity to navigate their own storms, to swim through their own personal hell and emerge, if not unscathed, then at least whole and self-possessed. This is the Stoic emphasis on self-reliance and the understanding that one cannot truly help another who is unwilling to first help themselves. 6. The unspoken betrayal of the eyes. The eyes, it is often said, are the windows to the soul, and for Sigma men, They are more than just passive windows. They are naked, unvarnished souls put on display for anyone astute enough to read their silent language. Sigmas don't just casually notice where you look during a conversation. They study it with the meticulous focus of cartographers mapping treacherous fault lines in the Earth's crust. A consistently diverted gaze and inability to maintain comfortable and reciprocal eye contact isn't typically interpreted by them as mere shyness or modesty. It's often perceived as a glaring neon sign flashing the word hiding, or insecure, or dishonest. Through observation and experience, they've learned that individuals attempting to deceive often fixate on mouths, perhaps unconsciously hoping to mimic sincerity by studying facial expressions, while those carrying deep trauma or anxiety may frequently dart their eyes towards perceived exits, subconsciously scanning for escape routes. But a Sigma's gaze, when he chooses to engage, it's often like a lighthouse beam, unwavering, penetrating, and capable of exposing the hidden shipwrecks and submerged truths beneath your carefully maintained surface. When someone consistently avoids their eyes, Sigmas don't usually feel personally rejected or unattractive. Instead, they feel warned. It's not primarily about a lack of romantic attraction. It's about a perceived misalignment in honesty, confidence, or emotional openness. They will mentally catalog every subtle nuance of your glance. Do your eyes genuinely brighten and sparkle when you discuss your passions, your true interests? Do they dart away nervously or cloud over with pain when recalling past hurts or uncomfortable truths? To a Sigma, sustained mutual eye contact isn't just a sign of intimacy or connection. It can sometimes feel like a profound, silent duel of authenticity. They are, in that moment, waiting to see if you'll metaphorically blink first, if your pupils will dilate with genuine recognition and shared understanding, or if they will shrink with fear, defensiveness, or an unwillingness to be truly seen. The eyes, in their unfiltered expressiveness, rarely lie, and Sigma men, through their keen observational skills, become remarkably fluent in their silent, powerful truth. This aligns with the Stoic pursuit of clarity and seeing things as they truly are, unclouded by deception. 7. The Funeral of Facades. Sigma men often attend social gatherings, parties, and networking events much like discerning anthropologists conducting fieldwork, observing the complex, often bewildering rituals of a society they've largely chosen to disengage from emotionally. They have meticulously dissected the common mating dances and social maneuvering of modern society, the subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, status drops designed to impress, the carefully crafted humble brags intended to elicit admiration without appearing overtly arrogant, the performative laughter that resonates 2 octaves too high and an instant too long. To their analytical minds, these interactions aren't just shallow or unfulfilling. They can feel like a form of violence against their most precious, non-renewable resource, time. Why they silently ponder, engage in prolonged discussions about fleeting Netflix shows or celebrity gossip when one could be dissecting the profound mysteries of the void, exploring complex ideas, or sharing deeply personal philosophies. Why attempt to flirt with superficial emojis and abbreviated text slang when the richness of direct, nuanced human conversation, or even profound silence, can speak volumes more? But here is where Sigma males are frequently misunderstood by those who only perceive their reserved exterior. They don't inherently hate people, nor are they misanthropic. What they possess is a deep-seated intolerance for performances, for the inauthentic masks people wear. That woman at the party loudly quoting philosophers she only superficially understands, purely to impress those around her? The guy relentlessly name-dropping tech startups he has only a tenuous connection with, hoping to bask in their perceived innovative glow? They aren't viewed as fools or antagonists by a Sigma. Rather, they are often seen as tragic figures, almost like ghosts haunting the peripheries of their own unlived, authentic lives. Sigmas crave conversations that leave indelible fingerprints on the psyche, dialogues where egos are willingly checked at the door, and where mutual vulnerability leads to genuine intellectual and emotional stimulation. They will instinctively walk past 100 dazzlingly sparkling, yet ultimately superficial personalities to find that one rare, perhaps slightly cracked, soul who is leaking genuine stardust, someone whose authenticity shines through their imperfections. This is the essence of valuing substance over show, a core tenet of a well-examined, Stoic-influenced life. 8. The rebellion against digital dopamine. In our hyper-connected world, smartphones have, for many, become the new cigarettes. Anxious hands constantly reaching for these digital pacifiers to soothe an underlying disquiet or to escape the present moment. Sigma men, acutely aware of their surroundings and the subtle dynamics of human interaction, invariably notice when someone's thumb twitches reflexively towards their screen in the middle of a face-to-face conversation. That tiny, almost imperceptible gesture? To a Sigma, it's a profound, albeit often unconscious, confession. It signals, I would rather be somewhere else, engaging with something or someone else, than fully present here with you. To a Sigma, a phone placed face down on the table during an interaction isn't necessarily seen as a mark of politeness. It can often be perceived as a loaded gun, a constant potential interruption, a visible symbol of divided attention. They don't see it as their role to compete with these devices for someone's focus. Instead, they are more likely to mentally disqualify anyone who consistently allows pixels and notifications to override genuine human presence and meaningful engagement. But this stance isn't merely about a nostalgic preference for old-school values, or a Luddite rejection of technology. It's rooted in a pragmatic understanding of neurology and human psychology. Sigmas recognize that every notification, every social media alert, hijacks our dopamine pathways, insidiously turning intelligent human beings into Pavlovian creatures, perpetually seeking the next small hit of digital reward, much like addicts at a slot machine. They have witnessed firsthand how real, deep relationships can starve and wither because one or both partners are constantly feeding on the empty calories of digital crumbs, superficial online interactions and fragmented attention, instead of nurturing the connection with sustained, focused, real-world presence. So they establish clear, albeit often unspoken, terms for their engagement. Be here, fully, authentically, and attentively, or feel free to be gone. A Sigma's attention, when granted, is like a finely honed scalpel, precise, intentional, and deeply focused. And it will be just as precisely and intentionally withdrawn the moment you treat that invaluable gift as disposable, secondary to the allure of a glowing screen. This reflects a stoic discipline, preserving one's focus for what truly matters and resisting the pull of external distractions. 9. The sanctuary of self-possession. A striking observation about modern society is how many people navigate their lives as relative strangers to their own inner landscapes, their motivations, their triggers, and their deepest fears. Sigma men, in stark contrast, often dedicate significant time and energy to becoming their own confessors, their own therapists, their own wisest counselors. They have willingly endured the uncomfortable, often grueling midnight audits of the soul. Why do I react with such intensity to this specific situation? What childhood ghost, what unresolved past experience, still subtly haunts my choices and influences my behavior today? What are my genuine values, and am I living in alignment with them? So, when they encounter someone who consistently blames their ex-partners for all their relationship chaos, who cites astrological configurations as a justification for their toxic traits, or who generally abdicates personal responsibility for their life circumstances, it's not primarily judgment or condemnation that a Sigma feels. It's a profound, visceral sense of disappointment. A Sigma doesn't enter interactions expecting to find perfectly enlightened beings, free of flaws or past wounds. What he does expect, or at least hope for, is a demonstrable commitment to self-awareness and a willingness to engage in the ongoing, often difficult, work of personal growth. He will readily forgive your scars, understanding that life inevitably leaves its marks on everyone, but he will find it exceedingly difficult to overlook your persistent denial of those scars or your refusal to take ownership of your healing journey. Have you ever noticed how Sigmas rarely get drawn into prolonged, emotionally charged arguments, especially those revolving around blame and personal attacks? It's often because they've already fought and continue to fight their most significant battles within their own minds. They will calmly observe you as you project your insecurities onto them, as you attempt to twist narratives to avoid uncomfortable self-reflection, and a quiet thought might pass through their mind. How tragic, you've mistaken me for a mirror, reflecting back the parts of yourself you are unwilling to face. Then, with minimal drama, they will often gracefully exit the situation, leaving you alone with the very reflection you've been desperately fleeing, because they understand their peace is too valuable to sacrifice in futile battles against another's lack of self-awareness. This is the Stoic ideal of focusing on one's own character and responses, recognizing that the only true power lies in self-mastery. 10. The elegance of emotional frugality. Sigma men are frequently misperceived as emotionless or detached, but this is a fundamental misunderstanding of their inner world. They aren't devoid of emotions. Rather, they are emotional architects, skilled in understanding and managing their own internal states. They have metaphorically studied the blueprints of emotional breakdowns, meticulously examined the intricate wiring behind impulsive outbursts, and learned to differentiate between genuine, vulnerable expression and manipulative emotional displays. When someone consistently weaponizes tears to elicit guilt or sympathy, or unleashes uncontrolled rage to intimidate or control, Sigmas don't typically see this as evidence of profound passion or deep feeling. Instead, they often perceive it as a sign of profound poverty, a poverty of self-control, a deficiency in healthy coping mechanisms, and a fundamental lack of respect for both themselves and the person on the receiving end of such displays. They will calmly, almost clinically, observe these emotional theatrics, not because they are cold or unfeeling, but because they are simultaneously calculating the potential cost of such volatility to their own cherished inner peace and stability. Herein lies the paradox of the Sigma's emotional landscape. Beneath their often calm, composed exteriors lies a volcanic depth of feeling, a capacity for intense passion and empathy. However, they have consciously chosen to channel that potent fire into constructive pursuits: creation, problem-solving, personal growth, and deep, meaningful connections, rather than allowing it to erupt into destructive, chaotic drama. They don't fear emotional intensity in others. They despise the exploitation of emotion for manipulative ends. A potential partner's past trauma isn't an automatic deal-breaker for a Sigma. However, their persistent refusal to acknowledge that trauma and actively work towards healing it most certainly is. Sigmas will often generously offer resources, suggest pathways to support, or share insights from their own experiences, but they will not provide perpetual emotional band-aids or attempt to fix someone who is unwilling to engage in their own repair. They will then step back, allowing the individual the dignity of their own journey. The implicit understanding is clear. Either you commit to rebuilding yourself or you risk drowning in the rubble of your own unaddressed issues. Their compassion is not a soft, enabling force. It possesses teeth, guided by discernment and a profound respect for self-responsibility. This reflects the stoic balance of empathy with rational judgment, and the understanding that true help empowers others towards their own agency. 11. The Anti-Seduction Manifesto. The elaborate, often disingenuous, game of seduction as commonly practiced in modern dating, is essentially dead to Sigma men. This isn't because they are prudish, inexperienced, or uninterested in intimacy. On the contrary, it's because they have metaphorically autopsied its lifeless corpse and found it wanting, built on a foundation of manipulation and insecurity rather than genuine connection. They've seen through the charade, how playing hard to get is often just fear masquerading in stilettos, a defense mechanism born from insecurity rather than a genuine display of high value. They recognize how calculated aloofness, the deliberate withholding of affection or attention, frequently masks deep-seated abandonment issues or a manipulative desire for control. While many others might still subscribe to the thrill of the chase, the excitement of the hunt, viewing romance as a game of conquest, Sigmas are typically stalking much bigger, more substantive game: mutual respect, authentic desire, and unambiguous, transparent communication. Here lies their unspoken heresy against the conventional dating rulebook. If I have to expend significant energy trying to convince you that I am worthy of your time, attention, or affection, then in my eyes, you have already failed a fundamental test of discernment and self-assurance. They will not jump through arbitrary hoops designed to test their commitment, nor will they pen elaborate love letters to soothe an insecure ego. A Sigma's interest, when genuinely piqued, is more akin to a binary switch. It's either on or off with no confusing dimmers or ambiguous settings. He will offer his full, undivided presence, his authentic self, but he expects and requires that this offer be met with an equal voltage of sincerity, clarity, and genuine interest from the other person. To those thoroughly schooled in the art of dating games, strategic ambiguity, and manipulative tactics, this straightforward, no-nonsense approach can feel alien, perhaps even intimidating or boring. But to Sigmas, it's simple, irrefutable math. Why invest precious time and energy chasing elusive shadows, deciphering mixed signals, and playing psychological chess when you could both choose to stand confidently in the clear, unambiguous sunlight of mutual honesty and directness? This approach aligns with the Stoic preference for truth and straightforwardness, rejecting artifice in human relations. 12. The sacred geometry of standards. It's a common misconception that Sigma men possess impossibly high standards when it comes to relationships and human connection. The reality is more nuanced. They don't just have high standards. They operate by a kind of sacred geometry, a meticulously crafted internal framework of principles and boundaries. Every boundary they establish is like a perfectly drawn Euclidean line, exact, unyielding, and forged in the crucible of brutal self-honesty and past experiences. They have often been labeled as rigid, inflexible, or overly analytical by those who don't understand the foundational importance of these principles. But that perceived rigidity is precisely the point. A Sigma's standards are not arbitrary preferences. They are the load-bearing walls of his inner sanctuary, the structural supports for his self-respect and emotional well-being. If he were to compromise on these fundamental principles, the entire carefully constructed edifice of his integrity and peace would risk collapse. This isn't about a relentless pursuit of unattainable perfection in others. It's about highly developed pattern recognition, honed over years of keen observation and often personal disillusionment. They have memorized the subtle, telltale signs of false promise, the overcompensating gifts that seem disproportionate to the stage of the relationship, the seductive future faking that paints a beautiful mirage with no intention of actualization, the all-too-common, "I'm not like the others" speeches that often precede behavior exactly like the others. To a Sigma, these red flags aren't just cautionary warnings to proceed with caution. They are often interpreted as definitive farewell letters, clear indicators that a fundamental misalignment exists. He will then walk away not typically with explosive anger or bitter resentment, but often with a quiet, melancholic grief, the subtle sorrow of someone who continues to hope that humanity, and the individuals within it, might aspire to something better, something more authentic. And yet, despite these recurring disappointments, they persist in upholding these standards. Not because they are naive idealists, but because they operate with an unshakable conviction that their sacred geometry, their unwavering commitment to their core values, will eventually and inevitably intersect with someone else's resonant truth, leading to a connection worthy of their profound investment. This echoes the Stoic commitment to living by one's principles, regardless of external outcomes, finding honor in the adherence to a virtuous internal compass. You've journeyed with us through the deliberate choices of the Sigma male, not as a retreat from connection, but as a profound affirmation of self-worth and an unwavering demand for authenticity. The path of the Sigma, guided by an internal compass of Stoic strength and rational thought, is often walked alone, not out of loneliness, but out of a refusal to settle for anything less than what truly resonates with his core. This isn't about superiority, it's about sovereignty over one's own mind and choices. Every time you've chosen solitude over shallow company, every instance you've traded fleeting external validation for enduring internal values, you weren't being cold or difficult. You were conducting essential triage on your soul, preserving your energy for what truly matters. The world, with its penchant for labels, might call this arrogant or aloof, but here at Sigma Male Community, we understand the truth. You're not avoiding connection, you're refusing to dilute its power and its purity. Keep those standards razor sharp. The individuals who are truly meant to align with your path won't fear your edges. They will recognize them as the boundaries of a well-defended, authentic home. If these insights resonate, if you feel that stirring of recognition, then you've found a valuable resource. We encourage you to subscribe to Sigma Male Community and hit the notification bell, ensuring you don't miss our future explorations into the mindset of masculine excellence and independent thought. Reflect on these points, apply them to your own observations, and continue to cultivate that unshakable inner fortress. For those of you who are ready to delve even deeper, to access exclusive content, early releases, and engage more directly with a community of like-minded men committed to this path of Stoic self-mastery and growth, we invite you to become a premium member of the Sigma Male Community through our channel memberships. It's an investment in your continued evolution, a commitment to becoming the strongest, most authentic version of yourself. Thank you for investing your time with us. Walk your path with conviction.